To Rising Tides Live. I'm your host, Shawn Walchef. This is a Cali BBQ Media production. We are live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, and today we are talking about the current state of digital tipping. And one of the coolest things is that we get to bring on two experts, the co-founders of a platform called Kickfin. If you don't know what Kickfin is doing for the industry, for restaurants, you will after this show. More importantly, we have a packed house. So we have a digital hospitality community that is waiting to ask questions, contribute to this conversation. Apparently, a lot of people want to talk about digital tipping, and we're excited to kick off today's show. So every Wednesday, every Friday, we do this live show. If you want to join this community, please go to betheshow.media/rising tides. And let's get into today's conversation. Mike, please bring up our guests. Yes. Brian Hassan, Justin Roberts, high level. Brian, give us 60 seconds. Who are you? What do you believe in? And then give us the current state of digital tipping. And I don't know if you can do that in 60 seconds, but you'll get a little grace on the I'm
gonna put my Micro Machines voice on if you guys, people are old enough to remember those commercials.
There you go. Well, go for it.
All right, cool. So Brian Hassan, Justin Roberts, co-founders, co-CEOs of Kickfin. Justin will kind of elaborate on the platform. Really excited to talk about digital tipping today, kind of what we're seeing, what you're reading publicly, and so forth. Shawn, would you like me to jump in real high level on what we're seeing?
Please. Yeah, please.
Okay, cool, great. So, we're now in February. We were looking back in 2024 and the data that we have. And what we found is that as a whole, the average amount of tipping done across all restaurants has been pretty steady last year. That's around like 19% of bills. There's kind of a really big gap though between full serve and quick serve, like counter service. We're talking about like almost 20% in full service and around like 15% in QSR. But like what we found to be really interesting is that states like California, for example, that don't utilize tip credits, have actually reported some of the lowest average tipping percentages.
Wow.
So like, if we look back at like second half of 2024, is like 18% below the national average.
Really? In California?
California.
Oh.
But what's interesting too, let's go take a look at on the flip side. We look at Delaware and West Virginia that has some of the most robust tip credits. We're seeing higher tipping percentages there, somewhere north of like 22%. So as we look at it from like overall 19%, but then we kind of drill down state by state, we'll see that the tip credit system, when something's robust offered, patrons are actually tipping more and the employees are taking home more. I'll just end with this real quick because I think I'm over my 60-second mark, Shawn. So apologies there. But
no, don't ever apologize. We appreciate you. We appreciate you guys joining the community and the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is exciting for us. We have like I said,
Cool.
We have a packed house today, but thank you for you guys' time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and with this, there's this concept, you see it everywhere, tipflation. You turn on the news, you open up Yahoo, and it's just all about this, like wherever you go, you're being prompted at POS to tip. And there's actually a lot of reasons for that. Like the POS companies that process your payments make money on the gross amount. And so the more you tip, the more they process, the more money they make. So POS companies are actually incentivized to implement their systems with tipping prompts. So think about that. Just increases their payments volume, but it's fatiguing a lot of consumers. And then you have the tip shame and all the other things associated with that, and then tipping flowing into other non-hospitality related businesses. And so tipflation's a real thing. We've all experienced it. It's still happening. But just in conclusion, tipping as a whole is pretty flat. State by state variations vary based off of tip credits, and tipflation is a real thing.
Amazing. Appreciate the high level, Brian. Justin Roberts, what is Kickfin? How are you guys helping the industry? And yeah, thank you for being here.
You bet. Well, we started this business just off the passion of really helping operators, what we believe is the most important part of each and every shift, which is the management of gratuities. For many years, even before we got into the market, we saw this kind of digital technology stack from point of sale, online ordering, and scheduling. And everybody had, one of 5 choices to work with in the market. And so when we were field testing the idea of rolling out a digital gratuity management platform, we were amazed that 90% of hospitality is still using physical currency to process and to pass out tips after every shift. So Kickfin came to market to make this very complex time of each shift really easy to consume the data from the point of sale, process the calculations based off of sales data and labor data, and use those complex rules to make it really easy for that manager to review the payouts that each employee needed to receive. And then what is most important is that we move that money instantly and directly to the employee's bank of choice. So we love the wow factor that that employee can get done with their shift. They know exactly what they've made, how their performance was tied to that gratuity, and then be able to walk out of that restaurant or hospitality venue and get that instant gratification of that money directly into their bank of choice. And we have the great fortune of working brands of all sizes across every single state, ranging in size from your walk-ons, fastest, emerging brands, all the way down to your single operator. And feel lucky to be here and most importantly, be of service to this fantastic group and audience that you have, Shawn.
Awesome. Before we bring on the community, can you share a quick story about when you guys were in startup mode? We had you on the Digital Hospitality Show, and you talked about the early days of talking to general managers actually on site at restaurants, reconciling tips with cash at the end of the night. Can you share a quick story about that and how Kickfin came to be?
Yeah, you bet. It was, I have to say, I mean, looking back at our career, like we've started other businesses within other verticals, and operators always kept things very close to their chest. They were unwilling to kind of give the secrets of like, here's the challenges we're dealing with. And the best part about starting Kickfin was just the people within hospitality. They would allow you to come into their restaurant at closing at 2 a.m. and sit down and kind of be that bank teller and watch them kind of fill these envelopes full of cash. And it was really then that aha moment when we were in San Francisco and we were meeting with Tiffany Yam at Salt Partners. And she said, guys, I literally just got back from the bank. I have an extensive amount of cash sitting in this so-called duffel bag, and I need to go put in the analog safe before the shift starts.
Yep.
And that was really the aha moment for us. And the early days, we always joke we paid the dummy tax, right? We had to like literally go door to door and educate the market. Like there is a better way. There's a better alternative than paying in cash. And we really were pumped that we could serve like a two-sided marketplace. Like the fact that we could make that operators, daily life just more efficient. Like they didn't have to sit there and fiddle around with Excel spreadsheets. But really the benefit was on the employee side, that kind of the wow factor of like, wow, I literally can pay for that bus ticket cell phone. I don't have to deal with that physical cash. So the early days of field testing, in my opinion, I think Brian can agree, was, sending you over a drink. Guys, I can't believe you're here at 2 a.m., asking us questions about this. But that was really the genesis of where this all started. And it was just all those great operators that were willing to say, this sucks. Like we need out. We want a better way. And that's where Kickfin was born.
Well, let's go ahead and bring up the community. We got a packed house today. A lot of awesome, incredible people in this digital hospitality community. We started this journey, this show specifically on Clubhouse, started meeting twice a week, building in public, connecting to other restaurant owners, hospitality professionals, technology professionals. And now here we are with a live show. So let's go. Richard Liverman, welcome to the stage. Take 60 seconds. Who are you, and what are your questions for our two featured guests, Brian and Justin?
Yeah, good evening, guys. I'm Richard. You can tell I'm in the UK. That's why I'm saying good evening, because it's pitch black here. I work for myself. I run a business called Richard Solutions. We live by a mantra of don't be boring, and that manifests through coaching, consultancy, branding, mentoring. And it's a really interesting topic. And I was thinking that the whole thing about digital tipping, like you're talking about it from a restaurant and hospitality perspective. I was actually thinking, I have a number of clients outside of that sector that I know in the UK, we don't tip as much as you North Americans. You guys are way more generous. But I was also thinking about how can you bring this into other businesses? And I was just wondering, is this something that you guys are looking at? Because straight away, I'm thinking there's one or two service-based businesses where, this would be really, really relevant. And do you think this is something that is going to happen outside of just restaurants? Just a question to the panel.
Yeah,
Hildy, I think Hildy, can you mute your mic, please? Thank you.
I'm happy to hop on that question real quick. Richard, great to meet you. I'm going to be on your side of the pond this May for my son's birthday, so we're excited to visit.
We will send you some restaurant recommendations.
I love that.
Don't believe this British people have bad food. It's not true.
Oh no, that's actually one of the reasons we're going. We would argue you guys have some of the best international food. So that's actually the reason we're going. I would love that. But we went to market initially, like the thesis was this is going to be a 1 to 5 location, full service restaurant solution, digital tip payouts, get rid of cash. And what we found was interesting, this business was launched in COVID, what's happening in North America and in the US was bank branches were closing. They're only allowing limited foot traffic to go actually into the branch, which is painful when it was pre-COVID, but that's even more painful. It was taking a lot of time. So that's kind of the accelerant behind Kickfin and FSR SMB. And then it went into enterprise, and all of a sudden we were getting inbounded by tour groups like, hey, we're running fishing charters and we want to go do payout tips to like all the service employees, or we're in the hotel space and we're focused primarily on payouts, not acceptance. So we're not deploying QR codes to accept tips. We're just like issuing the payouts. We're doing this in like the car wash environment as well, and other environments to where employees need that disbursement instantly. And sometimes these employees don't even have bank accounts. So the nice part about our product is whether you have a bank account, whether you have a pay card, you go down to Walgreens, grab something off the shelf, we can pay you. It's your choice. And so we've seen it sort of emerge. We're doing a lot in like salons for disbursements, personal services for disbursements. And that's really kind of the bread and butter. So it's just interesting. I appreciate that comment, Richard, because initially it started in SMB FSR, went to enterprise, went to pizza delivery, went to personal services, went to tours and events, went to hotels. But the culture here in the United States is very different from a tipping perspective than it is in the UK.
You're going to save a load of money over here. And that's my final follow-up question. You launching this globally, or is it just North America?
Where we're at right now, so we're in the US, we'll be moving into Canada at the close of this year. And then we are looking at the UK, maybe long term. It's just for us, it's like smaller transaction market, and you have tipping compliance rules, which means like accept the tip from it as a different transaction. So it's not eligible to pay particular taxes. And there's a lot of compliance work. But the thing is, in the US, like the total addressable market's like, 1.25 million restaurants. In Canada, it's about a quarter of that. And so that's a lot to chew on. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to make the mistake of going too broad, when if we stay narrow and focused and we know what we want, we know what we're good at, we'll prosecute that and then look at expansion opportunities there. But domestically, there's just so much there for us already.
That's awesome. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Michael Ungaro, San Pedro Fish Market. What's up, Mike? Can you take 60 seconds? Who are you? And what's your question for Brian and Justin on digital tipping?
Absolutely. You guys hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
My new mic. Great. All right, cool. Michael Ungaro, San Pedro Fish Market, and also Kings of Fish, which is our streaming docuseries on Amazon Prime about our family business. It's been started 60, almost 69 years ago. 60, I'm losing track. 1956. You guys do the math. I'm tired today. I'm not sure I have any questions. I was kind of more curious about the offer. I could tell you, which I think is relevant to the offer that you have. When we switched over to QR codes and integrating that in with Toast, I started noticing that our runners were making more money than the back of the house, which created some problems, and also like in some cases more than managers and some of our leads. So we've had to we're working on some creative solutions to that, but I would have situations where even like, I'd have nephews that would come in and say, Dad, my brother's one of the owners too, say to Dad, can I come and work this weekend? I need to make some gas money and then go home after 2 days with $400 in tips. It was kind of interesting because of the way that it was built into the QR code POS system ordering. So I don't have a question other than an observation, and just that I'm noticing it's disruptive, but also very interesting. I think for us, because in our current situation where we're using that system, we have 900 seats, and it's a temporary parking lot that we've been out of for almost 2 years as we're rebuilding our original location. But we didn't have the system like that before because we'd been around so long. It was really hard to implement that kind of a radical change is what I would call it. But when you had 60 days to reopen and you're figuring out how to do it in a parking lot, you're using some of these radical innovations in technology. And what I speculate is going to happen is we'll have no shortage of people that want to be runners. I don't know about the rest of the business model. So I'm not a complaint at all, just an observation of how technology disrupts it. And there's places where you could be really competitive and find the best workers and have to figure out a way to reward the rest.
Michael, I got a question for you because that's a great comment. Do you guys socialize your tip policy with the entire staff, or is it kind of, hey, we have the QR code, point of sale takes a tip, and then just at the end of the day, you get your shift? Is the policy of how they make money, is that socialized amongst the entire group?
It's supposed to be, I think at first we weren't expecting the numbers to be that big.
Yeah.
So excuse me. We don't have that system in our other locations. So you have a couple of approaches. Well, I'd rather go work over there and just run than what's happening in our typical restaurant model, where we haven't instituted that yet, or we have a different version of it, I'll say. And what I mean, not to go real deep into it, but our primary model, which is how we'll be designing our restaurants moving forward, is very much more experiential. It's much less of a typical restaurant model where you come in and a host seats you and you have a server and then you're working that way. And our system was really more like come in, pick out your own seafood, design your own menu, essentially, and we cook it for you. What we were forced to do in this situation in the parking lot is figure out, since we're getting evicted out of these buildings and we're not going to have 3,000 seats and we're going to be in a parking lot with 900 seats using mobile kitchens for a temporary amount of time, how do we take that experience and shrink it down? And what we created by accident was a much more efficient system. So what they're doing in that location is they are socializing those tips and back of the house, in front of the house. I think where the issue was, you have some people that have been with us 10, 15, 20 years going, they're making more money than me. And I'm like a manager. And so we've had to figure out how to balance that out with benefits, salary, and different things. And also it's California. So the laws are, not in our favor ever. So you're like, always, am I triggering a new lawsuit again? I have to be careful because we had a class action that was sort of a wage and earnings lawsuit that cost us $2 million. I mean, it almost put us out of business. So we're also being hypersensitive to what we can and can't do. So I don't know if that answers your question. We're just kind of working through it.
Your comment was really helpful. And I think responding to that will be beneficial to the audience here as a whole. I would say when it comes to a tipping policy, it's interesting. I mean, restaurant operators have just a stack of stuff to go through just to get somebody in the restaurant working. And it is overwhelming to say the least. And it's interesting because we've seen a lot of like best in class operators look at the tipping policy really as a recruiting and retention tool. And they don't just kind of put it to the side during the setup of a new employee, and they socialize the wins with staff. So to give you some more context there is like, when you think about like visibility into the tipping policy, and so the entire group that is working there really understands what it means to give exceptional service, right? And so when we see some of our operators, because they hand us these massive Excel documents, and we're talking pivot table on pivot table, and this, that, and it's sliced and diced in ways that is crazy complex, and no one does it the same. And so I would say it's really interesting that we've seen some of our best operators take that Excel document and really hard code it for the staff to understand. Hey, we have a happy hour today. We want to sell more Mick Golden lights, right? And if you do so, that ties into the tip pool and what have you. And so it's been really interesting for us because we've seen those specific sites when that policy is socialized and visible for those employees to see who's performing well, making more. It ties back to your nephew of saying, I want to go make $400 in cash this weekend because I know my performance will pay that. So I would just say, I mean, I think about this from everybody's standpoint. The best managers almost bring that up on a weekly stand-up. Like, here's your potential. This is outside of that W-2 wage. Why not, perform your job at the ultimate level? Because that 400 become 500, right? And here's why. So they kind of back into the tip policy much more often than we ever expect.
Yeah, that's what we're designing around. And what's interesting is I didn't know this until we had our annual with our leadership team, that we had almost 100% turnover in our newer location, which is more of a standard restaurant and not what we're going to be doing moving forward. We learned from mistakes. But in this parking lot situation, which will really be what our brand is as we open our new location in Monterey, California, and rebuild on our 55,000 square foot location in San Pedro, is we're looking at turnover's not there, where you have you have this earning potential that didn't exist before. And I don't know if they're correlated. I assume that they are. I think people would rather come and have the higher earning potential to just run the tables rather than be a server. So we're actually kind of doing a lot of Q&A and interviewing our employees, and actually trying to do more exit interviews to determine what exactly is what makes you happy and why do you want to stay. And we've done a lot of other things outside of the tipping part of it and the income part, because I mean, you guys probably know this, but if when they poll people as to why you stay somewhere, usually income or salary, pay, or compensation is usually at the bottom of the list. It's like number 5 or 10, or out of 10 is usually somewhere between 5 and 8, I think. It's usually just wanting to be heard and appreciated and listened. So we're like, how much do we want to focus on the tipping things versus just like, tell us what your issues are and help us. So we're kind of going through all that right now, and it's a work in progress for the year now that we're getting into February.
Well, those servers too, servers, bartenders, they're your salespeople, right?
Yep.
And having that variable comp, I mean, we've seen this like in the companies we build, when the software salesperson is knocking the skin off the baseball, they just keep going. They just keep building and building and building, and then they become your loyalist and they become like your champion. And so that variable comp is huge in building like a culture that actually has a direct impact on revenue, right? They're like, okay, I'm taking 15 to 20% home of sales. So if I sell more, if I upsell, I then make more. And so they have a direct impact on revenue. So to Justin's point, when you're actually like educating them, it's not just kind of behind the scenes, so-and-so might have made this, so-and-so might have made that, but list it by sales. People take transparency to different levels. Some people aren't comfortable doing that. But at the end of the day, if you're building like a culture of high performers and you want those customers to come back and request that server or that bartender who's going to sell more, huge impact on revenue. And like, we're big fans of transparency. And when we built out the app, we built out full transparency so employees can log in. Employees can see how much they made. They can see how much they gave away, who they even gave it to, how much they've kept. And it's just like that level of transparency. It's, sometimes customers come to us and say, I want to get rid of cash. And oftentimes customers come to us and that's not the big pain point. They're like, I just want to just stop the madness here where the servers are bickering over like who's making what, and just put it out in front of them. And so it's like, we're not hiding behind anything here. It is what it is. And if you want to make more, and it provides also coachable opportunities for management. Like, hey, let's talk about, you want to earn more. Let's talk about Justin over here. Here's some strategies Justin has approached and deployed and so on and so forth. So I feel transparency in tipping provides great coaching opportunities for managers, which helps drive revenue top line for the restaurant. That's just what we've seen. And we work with a lot of restaurants. We work with some amazing operators that have nailed it. We work with some that are kind of challenged and early in the business. We work with some that have been doing it the same way the whole time and they're never going to change. So fortunately, we've been given a ton of exposure here, but we've seen the most successful operators have deployed more of a transparent model and coached to the variable comp.
That's really great. I actually was in a conversation with some of the team yesterday about putting together a sales training program, like 10 parts of the sales conversation, and keeping it real light, but just opening it up and then showing people like, look at how this made a difference. And it's not just in the servers. I mean, to me, HR is probably your biggest sales Salesforce is getting the right people in the door in the first place. So
what's cool about that, Michael, is like put the tipping aside. Just put that all aside here. But like the fact that you're thinking about doing like a sales training for not just waiters, waitresses, bartenders, but whoever wants to talk about continual education and how that's applicable. Because you just went back to that list of like, why do people stay at companies? For the most part, it's they like their manager, then they love the business. They're providing continuing education in a way to like develop professionally, and then comp is kind of coming right after that based. So the fact that you're putting that on, that's like such a soft product that you can deliver to your employees where they're going to get a ton of value out of it, applicable to beyond
everywhere.
Working. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you being part of the community. As busy as you are, still finding time for the rising tides. You're the best, man. Thank you.
Glad to find my way back.
Now you're always welcome. You know that. We're here playing ball. Always welcome to be a part of the conversation. Kyle and Sarah, who are you, and what's your questions about digital tipping? I know you've gone viral multiple times on your Mr. Restaurants TikTok. Every time you talk about tipping or closing early, you seem to go viral.
Touch a nerve. Yeah, for sure. My name is Kyle and Sarah. I am a former restaurant owner. Now I am the founder of a company called 10Rep, where we represent mainly emerging franchises and helping them grow their real estate footprint with flexible solutions. But I'm also host of the Close Monday podcast, a restaurant industry podcast. And I have to say, like, working with these franchise groups, you guys would be shocked to see how many of them are disorganized behind the scenes, particularly when it comes to tech. I mean, some of them even have different POS terminals in each one of their, markets. So I'm curious how you guys are able to handle, obviously you guys want to scale and grow, and this is a fantastic solution to the tipping dynamic in restaurants. But with this dynamic of different technologies, even different platforms, how do you guys handle that? Is that something you can address?
Yeah, from our perspective, we just think it's a really unique moment in time. Again, I go back to like pointing to data that whether Kickfin's in market or not, like this is the reality. I mean, Visa, MasterCard have all touted that they understand that 80 to 90% of venues are still using physical currency to pay tips. And it's one of those, like, we've always done it that way. The hospitality industry has that expectation of walking in and getting that, that envelope of cash and walking out. And so what we really try to lean into is making the product ridiculously easy to try, right? So if we can't, Brian and I always joked, if you can't make it easier for them to implement Kickfin to running to a bank branch to get cash, we're not going to be in business. So when I look at our go-to-market motion, call it 5 years ago, the whole kind of value prop was, how do we eliminate physical currency from the operation? And that went really well. Like if a manager could simply take an Excel spreadsheet, drag it into our system and process tip payments and have the reporting on the back end, like that was like the 80-20 rule. We solved kind of 80% of the problems that they were dealing with. And nowadays, thanks to Keely on the marketing side, is really driving awareness. You don't have to do it this way. And again, I say whether you use Kickfin or not, like regardless, you should look at gratuities as the most important part of that checkout process, where you can leverage technology to really empower operations and really kind of give the wow factor to the employee. And so now that we've gone in market for quite some time, like, people have higher expectations. I wanted to integrate. I wanted to do the calculation work for me. And Kyle, you nailed it. It's interesting because even at corporate, I'll give you an example. They do it one way, but franchisees don't do it the same way, right? And their technology stacks are complex. I look at restaurant operators and I'm like, these are probably the most sophisticated people. Like when you think about what they have to buy, right? It's like, if you look at, they probably have 15 different vendors just on technology that they have to deal and work with. And we try to really fit in that almost seamlessly and almost just, make it easy, because we know that we're up against a lot of other technology platforms that have to go into the operation.
Yeah, and I know that implementing at the franchisor level can be a challenge, because they know what they have at hand. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Kyle. Thanks for joining. Howard Solomon, who Who are you, and what's your contribution or question to digital tipping? A man with lots of experience in the restaurant space. Don't be humble.
Who am I is a big question.
It's a big question, I know, and a 60-second time limit too.
Yeah, I'll give you the short version. I'm on the call. I'm Shawn, COO. I'll just leave it at that.
See, he can't promote himself. It's like it's in against his nature to talk about all the accolades of this historic restaurant career.
Hey Brian, we've met before.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
You're in San Diego by Shawn, right? And then you have a restaurant, if I remember correctly, and I don't know the name of the district, but Little Italy, area of San Diego. I remember that conversation 2-3 years ago, right?
Yep. Very, very good memory. So
Howard's a memorable guy though, right, Shawn?
He's when you know Howard, you definitely know Howard, that's for sure.
So great conversations. Tipping has definitely come a long way from where it used to be, which is I'm going to give you some background first, and then I'll ask you the big question. Tipping back in the day for those really smart restaurant managers was a very analytical process. They looked at both how much money people made and did that equate to providing good service. Servers that made a lot of money, in our minds gave really great service. Mm-hmm. So there was that analysis. And also behind the bar, bartenders that made a lot of money, Jesus, how many free drinks did they give away? So it was a tool, to know like what that percentage was that's very easily attainable, with Kickfin. It also meant it was a good gauge of hospitality. How well you provided hospitality to your guests. Kickfin is largely a product of cloud-based POS systems that now gave you the choice of 15, 18, 20%, click a button and you're done. There is no shorthand math on your napkin like my dad used to do. There are no more Walmart cards, these little business size cards that said if your bill is between this amount and this amount and you want to tip 10%, tip this number. There's like no more of that anymore. You click a button and you're done. Right? So based on the people that your customers and this conversation that you've already talked about, training and staff improvement, how has that tip button and lack of servers and runners and things actually getting cash affected hospitality?
So I'll break that answer sort of into two parts here. Quick service, I'll give you one answer for quick serve, counter service, and I'll give you one answer on full serve. So on the full serve side, it's the people already go in there expecting to tip 18, 20, yep. 22, 25. So in that regard, the behavior hasn't really changed much. It's just simplifying. I mean, is the person going to tip differently manually versus clicking a button? Probably not in full serve, unless your buttons are 25, 35, and 50, which is a little outrageous, right? But like not much of a difference. And what we're doing in that case is we're 95% of transactions are credit cards, saving the bank runs, paying out digitally, leaving safe and secure at night. That's one side, right? You get that.
Brian, real quick, sorry. Do you feel that the server's mindset has changed because they know getting tipped now is easier because they just press a button?
I would say that's going to be part of my QSR answer. On the FSR side, though, I will say, you'll notice when you have transparency and people seeing what other people are making and how much they're giving up out of the pool and what have you, it creates, going back to the conversation with Michael about tip transparency and coaching, you actually start seeing an impact to revenue. So the button is not as impactful as the transparency to see the variable earnings. On the flip side, on QSR, now that's where we're kind of digging into it. That's where the tipflation is happening, where like If the POS didn't have the button, would somebody have left the tip? And quite honestly, probably not. Let's think about this cup of coffee. It's like $5, right? What's, I'm getting a bunch of coffees. Now I only have $2 in my wallet. Oh, I'm going to click 25%. I'm going to click what have you. And now we're increasing the transaction volume. Is it providing better service? I would say in QSR, probably not so much, but I'd encourage operators to chime in. I think it has become post-COVID is sort of like a standard from the consumer perspective to where they're getting burnout, but I don't see the employees on the backside, on the flip side of the counter, actually performing a better service. I will also say, with respect to tip credits, QSRs that we've seen, typically they're paying a per hour fee, and tips on top of that are like the gravy. But in FSR and tip credit states, they're paying, like in Texas, they're paying $2.13 an hour and then applying tips as tip credit. So in fact, a lot of these QSR, it's not changing the service behavior of QSRs, but they're actually making more because most QSRs don't pay the tip credit salary.
Yeah, the tipping in the QSR world has become part of their wage, not necessarily an incentive to provide amazing hospitality like the full service and casual type restaurants, where it used to drive, that tip revenue.
Yep. And what's interesting too, Howard, is that we all know like alcohol carries bigger margins than food, and we want to sell more alcohol. And so the nice part about having transparency into what the variable earnings that employees are making is, like, for example, we break it down all the way down to the item level. So as GMs go in, they can actually coach to, all right, you made $150. Do you realize that if you actually started pushing maybe 10 or 15% more in alcohol sales, that 120 would become 155. So as a manager, you're able to coach the higher earning potential based off of looking at the data. And it's hard to do that in Toast standalone, but as you use Kickfin or any other tipping provider should provide that service, you should be able to look at the item detail and like coach to it. Like I would say, like impact, having transparency, seeing earnings, seeing what's driving the earnings, what they're sharing. And then at the end of the day, if you just leave it, hey, transparency, it is what it is. The employees are like, that's fine. But like the onus is on the GM to coach to it.
Yeah, I think the biggest tool outside of the ease of the banking and the little tip envelopes and the amount of time that a manager spends is to take all that time they used to spend on that stuff and really dig into the analyticals and the transparency of it, and evaluate, that tip percentage and server tip percentages against each other, and find it a coaching opportunity. So I wholeheartedly appreciate that. That's awesome. Just as a side note, I'm going to hop on the Kyle and Sarah bandwagon here for a second. But I have this little pop-up business that we do farmers markets and breweries.
Little pop-up business. You're the pastrami king of San Diego. What are you talking about? Little pop-up business. Come on.
And I find it very interesting that in some of our markets, we sell hot dogs as well as pastrami, and a killer pastrami dog. But anyway, when we sell hot dogs to a parent who's just getting it for their kid to shut up, they don't tip. It drives me insane. So parents who buy a kid meal, so to speak, or something for their kids, they don't tip. When they buy it for themselves and it's an $18 sandwich or whatever, they tip pretty well. And they appreciate the handcraftedness and the conversation and all that kind of stuff. So
you're going to have to toss some cotton candy next to that hot dog. And
I guess so. I don't know how to get a parent to tip on a hot dog, but it drives me absolutely up the freaking wall, Kyle.
I'd like to jump in on this just for a second, if I could.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, take 60. Who are you? And jump in. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, good to see you again, and everybody. Chris Tripoli with the Restaurant Clinic. We're a restaurant advisory and consulting firm, and I am with the restaurantowner.com as a content creator and their podcast host. What I'd like to talk about is that point that just came up, and that's the effect on service with this idea of what we call a reverse tip earning for not so much for full service, but obviously what's happening to counter service. People go up, they order, they see the POS, they tip. Okay, so that means we've already made our tip. Food hasn't been cooked, nothing's been run to the table, nothing's really happened. And yes, I think if we just let it sit like that, what we're noticing is a diminishing of service, which is a big problem for hospitality lovers. And that's just going to help perpetrate more tip fatigue, which is, an issue. So what I like that I've seen, and I know we've been very active in it, and I know other firms do it too, is training videos now are flipped with the purpose of not trying to impress to then earn a tip, but to go out afterwards and earn what you've already been paid. That's the new program. There's a video program called 5-Star Service in 5 seconds that amplifies that point that counter service has very little interaction now. Smile, hello, take the order, and you got tipped. Okay, but there's still other touch points, and we're having to train now to have the touch points, show guest appreciation, run the food, suggestive selling, thank you at the door, and you're doing that because basically they've already paid you to it. So it's kind of a reverse thing, and it's interesting. It's a challenge, but I think that's what we're going to have to do, because if not, we're going to be talking about a lot more tip fatigue, where it's like I'm giving money and I'm getting nothing, and that's what some people are already thinking, I think.
Any response, Brian or Justin?
Yeah, I mean, QSR is a real interesting thing, and Chris, you nailed it. I mean, I think about the coffee I get every morning, where that button comes up, I'm given the dollar before they've even turned around and given the order to the barista, right?
Yeah.
And so that is that creates its own set of challenges, because then you have to be equitable, right? And not just the person punching the buttons in the point of sale, but the person that's cleaning the tables and putting out a sandwich or what have you. And so it very much people do get that tip fatigue. And I go back to your comment on training. You nailed something as it relates to, hey, you got to know people's names when they walk in, or you got to make a comment, how's your day going, whatever it may be. Again, we've seen the best operators that say, hey, listen, this may not last forever. This button is probably going to be diminished if you don't provide this above and beyond level of experience. And Brian said this, and our team says this all the time. People that do the best, that have the best ROI on tipping, constantly bring back the tipping policy and the why and what it means to their income on the weekly. Like, they highlight those top performers and they give the why behind it. Hey, have you ever seen Chris up there? He literally knows at least 50, 60% of the people's names that come in here are regulars. And here's why, that is thing. So, there's not a poof magic wand. It's going to work in this way or not in the other. Again, I go back to whether it's quick service or full service. These operators on that weekly stand up are bringing this tip policy forward, explaining the why behind it and what the impacts are to that employee's W2 above and beyond the W2 wage. And it's thrilling for the people who do it and really provide that transparency to them.
For those of you who might know a small, rapidly growing concept called Vicious Biscuit, they do a really good job of that.
Yep.
Vicious Biscuit is on it, and I love their videos. I love their training, because it's all about reverse. People came in and they already ordered. We've already been paid and we've already been tipped. Now we've got to go perform to basically say thank you for what you've given me. Rather than years ago, it was, we got to go perform in hopes that they will see that and appreciate me. And they did a really good job of it. But I'm a little concerned, and I'm not sure how you all feel, but I just think that there's a lot of tipping, and that in the short term, we liked it because it was, in addition to tipping because you appreciate the service. Through COVID, I think we got a wave of tipping because these are people that are working really hard under horrible situations. It's a tough industry. They deserve to earn more. Happily, we took it. Yep. Now there's many of us that think we're going to get sliced on the other side of that, because as we're pushing for, and it looks like we're going to get no tax on tips, I'm wondering if there's going to be a pushback where the consumer's thinking, well, now you are making more money. You don't have to pay tax. That's a big raise. I don't have to tip as much. There's some of us that think we might get some of that. What do you guys think?
My perspective is, if the customers had a great meal, I don't think they're going to pinch pennies to kind of say, like, well, instead of tipping 20%, they're not paying FICA on this, so they're saving the 7%. So I'm going to give them 18.5%. I mean, okay, There's going to be that person that does that. There's also going to be that person that still whips out that business card to figure out how much they need to tip. There's always going to be that there's always going to be that person. It's always going to be that person. But I'd say as a whole, I mean, I don't think there is going to be a real big impact to that. I think yeah, I don't see that at all happening.
Good.
Great addition, Chris. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Eric, from the front lines, who's now not on the front lines, the first time like I've gotten him out of the restaurant so he can actually be the CFO of Cali Barbecue, but somebody that's been dealing with tips from when I hired him in the parking lot in 2008. Thanks for being here, Eric.
Yes, thanks for having me. Yes, tips. I'm CFO Cali Barbecue. A lot of experience with tips. Bartender for a long time.
Lots of envelopes.
Lots of tip envelopes. Lots of lost tips, stolen tips, all that stuff. Tips have always been contentious, and we all know that. And I've always hated them, even when I was a bartender, because it's just this secret cash thing that everybody keeps to themselves, and just they hoard it and they hide it, and I mean they even steal it. It's absurd, and the way customers treat it, the way coworkers, it's always just been a weird thing to me, having all that cash just flying around, and not having it recorded. Like all these bartenders and servers don't even know how much money they make because they just spend it when they go out, and I was there at one point too. So I love the tip pooling. I love the digital tipping. I love the transparency. I love having it all written down, and you can analyze it and how to make more money. The thing that Chris brought up, the reverse wage as it is, I think that's great because we're kind of seeing it in our restaurant, or one of our restaurants, because we do a tip pool. It's how when I used to wait tables at bartend, I always thought of it that way too. I never counted my money till the end. I never even looked at tips until the end because I always just gave the same service. And I think people get caught up on I got a bad tip, and then they continue to give bad service. And no matter how much training you do or whatever policy you have as a restaurant owner, you can't change that. When you have this, you're stuck with this thing. And you can never change it, no matter what. You can train, you can fire, you can hire, you can do it, but you can never change the feeling that somebody's going to have because it's so personal they take it so personal between the customer and the staff member that it's just, it ruins somebody's day, and then it ruins your business. And I've always hated that. That's why I do like tip payouts on checks. I love what Kickfin's doing with the daily payouts and all that, so people can still get paid on a daily basis. And like I said, we changed to a tip pool after COVID, and it's been successful with us too. One thing I will add is it's nice as an owner or operator to be able to control everybody's wages. It sounds fishy if you say it to these hourly employees or to servers, but I think somebody was talking about in the beginning is when you see how much money some people are making and how little others are making, and then the discrepancy in how much work is being performed. It's nice to be able to mold a tip pool into being fair for every position and bringing the wage gap closer is how I feel.
That's cool, Eric. And 17 years with Shawn. I guess you guys kind of get
He gets
along.
a medal.
And I tell you what, it must have been a damn good bartender to go from bartender to CFO in 17 years and still be hanging around the hoop with Shawn here.
Yeah.
He gave me a bar or how to open a bar for dummies book the first day.
I did. I did.
I was like, I don't know how,
We figured it out.
I think about 17 years later.
I should have given you the how to start a media company for dummies book, or maybe we're writing that one.
Yeah.
I think we'll publish that book. Do you have any questions for Brian or Justin, or any feedback as somebody that has been dealing with tips? Like, what should they build? What would be helpful?
I mean, I like it all. I like how when people don't get their money every day, I think it makes a better employee to have a paycheck and get it weekly or bi-weekly like most people in the world. Because again, it stops all that emotion. I do think that for you guys doing the daily tip out does make sense. It makes it easier for people to switch over and all that. So I do like that. I don't know. I like everything you guys are doing. It looks great, and it seems to be working. And I love the transparency.
So what's interesting on that is that You're right, Eric, man. You got $150 and it's 2 a.m. and you're going out to a bar and you're going to spend a portion of that because, I mean, if you've been on your feet for 8 hours, like slinging drinks, you're exhausted and you just want to decompress, right? And you go. What we actually noticed, interestingly enough, is that when people moved away from like physical currency to doing it digitally, or even like you guys doing it on paychecks, they don't have the $150 in their wallet burning a hole in their pocket, right? And that's whether it's digital or getting it that night, it's already in their bank account, or getting it on their paycheck. So I thought that was interesting, and also it's, hey, at the end of the day, I know we keep kind of coming back to this, is that we have some venues like in Scottsdale, some nightclubs in Scottsdale where some of the front of house employees, it's the amount of money they make makes me wish I did that, when I was in college. It's absolutely ludicrous how much money these people make. But at the end of the day, it ties back to it drives revenue for the business, and that the GMs at these venues coach to how to perform, what to sell, how to make more money. Whether you're doing an instant or whether you're doing it on checks, as long as you're giving like the employees the daily visibility and what they're accruing and what they're making, like that's big, and that's what keeps people around. So, for example, hey, maybe you're doing payroll every 2 weeks, and it doesn't. Some complaints we've heard of, like, I don't even know what I'm going to get until that check shows up, and I look at the line and it's this number, and I just got to trust that the GM did the math right. On the flip side, you can still give it to them every 2 weeks, but having them the ability to kind of log in daily to see what they're accruing and what they're giving up to employees and what they're keeping is like a big deal. I mean, we're in this culture. Think about the people that now, like Gen Z, millennial, working in restaurants. Like, it's a culture of transparency. It's not just like in the software space, like transparent salaries, post what the role is going to be providing you in earnings, but also transparency in other roles. And if you think about it, like, I'm in Austin here, right? It's $2.13 for bartenders and servers, tip credit state. Like 90+% of their earnings are from tips. And like not knowing what it's going to be until check date, I mean, that's kind of scary. But knowing what you're doing, knowing that you can make a direct impact, knowing you can pivot 2 days later and perhaps go to your GM, how can I make more money? Or perhaps I need to pick up another shift and be more proactive about that to make more money. Whether you're paying it out daily or on payroll, giving that employee that visibility and what they're kind of accruing and building up is like huge.
That's awesome. Appreciate it, Brian. Thank you, Eric, for taking the time to join, and everybody with your patience. We are going to go to 11:15, so we'll try to get as many people on as possible. Elizabeth Doss, you got 60 seconds, and what's your question? Thank you for being part of our Rising Tide community and showing up all the time. We appreciate you.
Yeah, sure. My name is Elizabeth Doss. I'm a social media consultant and I am a motion graphic designer. So I specialize in creating animations for brands and businesses to leverage across social media in the form of animated GIFs. So that's GIF stickers on Instagram and in comments and all across the board. And so that's what I do. If you're interested, reach out to me. Okay. Because I was trying to think about this. It's funny. Michael had one of the questions I was going to ask, and then other people have touched on Chris touched on some of the other ones. So I was like, oh, what am I going to ask? So I was curious if you had any stories of how it's impacted a server's life, like maybe a moment where the instant access to the tips made a real difference for them. So whether it's getting an Uber home, because you can't necessarily use cash for that, or medical expenses, or paying rent on time, or anything like that. I just didn't know if you had any stories that you could share with us, how you're seeing it make a big difference to people in the moment.
Well, I love the glasses, Kickfin color. I feel like we're already aligned there. So I love it. Yeah, it's interesting. I take a step back when I think about, Kickfin from the early days, where it was really just, and we were told by investors and people from day one, like, this is just a little feature business. Like, this is like, how are you going to impact lives of that two-sided marketplace you talk about, the operator and the employee? And my hope with this conversation is that people really look at this gratuity management. It's a standalone category because of the complexities that go into it. And we keep on harping on this visibility and the calculation, taking all of these one-off crazy scenarios, moving it through a system making it easy for a manager push submit and then paying those employees and then tying back into payroll. And so through that process, there's, it's littered with that experience of that employee being able to stay gainfully employed. I mean, we've all seen the TikTok ones of a Shaquille O'Neal or others that roll in and drop that $1,000 tip. And that's awesome, right? I mean, like, who doesn't want to be there at that right place at right time? But I think the things that we say, and we look at, and I'll point to the use cases of, a Marco's Pizza, people that were forced into a pay card, a separate banking relation to receive those tips, and then moving over to Kickfin, where we don't care if they're Bank of America, local credit union. And we try to like really double click into those experiences often because those are the people that are using the product day in and day out. It's that person that is, hey, I got paid now. I need to pay that cell phone bill before it's due. And as much as I'd love to, tout all the ones that get $2,000, $3,000 and drop the microphone and you leave with, you go to Vegas after a shift, those are so few and far between. But I think the thing that keeps our team motivated and excited every single day is those employees that say, listen, this helped me save better. This allowed me, the moment I got done with my shift, to move that money where I personally choose to pay a bill. And those are the ones that we see all the time. But if you get one that is doing 2,000, send it our way. We'd love to highlight it. That's amazing.
Elizabeth, there's a term that happens in Kickfin. I got kickfinned. I got kickfinned is what employees are using. So think about a GIF that employees can make to let people know. Charlie Eblin, are you able to unmute? Thank you for your patience. Mr. Single Tree Nation. I'll call on him when he's not ready. Travis, do you want to go as a representative of Single Tree?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go for it.
Gotcha. So I'm Travis with Single Tree. I am the catering manager. So I've really don't have a whole lot of serving experience or since I've just started this position, I'm just getting into the whole tipping world. So I've definitely
How do you guys do tips for catering?
So in the couple instances so far this year, most of them have been. What's that?
Charlie, I'm putting you guys on the spot. Tell me about your catering tip out policy.
What's the question?
Welcome to Building in Public.
Oh yeah, man, let's do it. Well, we're talking about tips. How we do tips?
Yeah, how do you do catering tips?
So catering tips are a little bit different. So we divide them from the front and the back. So Travis gets a percentage of it. The back gets a percentage of it. So it's fair all the way around because most of the time the catering's, it's kind of like that fast casual model. They're tipping before they've received the service. And I'm a little controversial on that. I think it's ridiculous to ask people to tip on things that they haven't received yet. So it's kind of like paying for a car that you don't have, right? It's just not what you're going to do. So but because of people doing that, and we require them to pay for their food and service prior to getting it, I want it to be fair.
Catering is such a great business. It's completely different than the restaurant business.
Yeah, it's great. Look, if we could do the amount of sales we need to do in just catering, that would be amazing, right? So, but with Travis being new, I solicited feedback from my entire team on how we should do the tips, and then I disperse them every week on their paychecks. So we get paid. I pay my entire team every Friday. All their credit card tips go out on Fridays, so it goes straight into their account, and then they keep all their cash tips every single day. So
awesome. Well, we appreciate it. Travis, did you have a question or something you wanted to contribute?
No, I'm just like I said, I don't serve very much, only when I need to. I never really thought about. Obviously, you want to provide the good service, the undeniable service, the hospitality, all those things. But I did notice when you start pushing more for appetizers and desserts and beers and things like that, you tend to get a little, your tips are a little bit higher. So I'm going to implement a lot of what you guys have been saying into my service when I tip or when I serve. So I appreciate being here and appreciate all the knowledge that you guys are
We appreciate you. Keep
spewing
showing
out
up.
to me. Yeah.
Thank you,
You
Travis.
know, we also see too, I was going to add real quick, is that, and this is all state by state, right? We have some clients, because we know that you can't, in some states, you cannot share the tip pool with your back of house by law. So we're seeing some successful brands do rev share to back of house. So based off of sales or based off of profit, back of house gets a predetermined percentage.
Interesting.
And so what does that mean? That means they know that it's not about just speed, it's about quality, because speed and quality yields a larger tip. Front of house is excited because their tips are up because the food is coming out at a great pace and it's extreme high quality. People are paying for more product, and as a result, the back of the house feels that they're able to legally participate in variable earnings. Again, varies state by state, the laws, but we have seen some groups deploying a profit sharing to back of house. And we've even have some groups where they set an actual threshold where it's like there's no eligibility for profit sharing until you hit this sort of cliff, so target sales amount, and then it activates. So you have, and what that does for these particular groups, it creates a more of a team environment between your front of the house and the back of the house, as opposed to this rift between the two different groups. And a minority of groups that we have, but we have seen it. We've seen it being deployed successfully, both in full service restaurant and then like nightlife with a food element as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Hildy, for your patience. Hildy, you're up next. Go for it. 60 seconds. What's your question?
Hi, I'm Hildy, and I sell swag for a living, which most people think of as t-shirts and hats and awards. When it comes to
Hildy, you're still on mute. We can't hear you.
No, we can hear. I can hear you. Go ahead, Hildy.
Thank you, Shawn. Sorry
Steven,
you can't hear me.
go for it.
Maybe your ears won't be bleeding, which is a good thing.
You're good.
Okay, so I do have a question about tipping. About a year, maybe 2 years ago, I had the aha moment because I waited tables most of my life, and it was always like I did whatever it took to get good tips, and sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. And I decided, and it started, I think, because I was going to get a scalp massage, and I thought, what would happen if I tipped her, give her 20 in advance and say, this tip is because I know what a great job you're going to do. And how would that affect my experience? And I know someone just said they're kind of against that, but I have been doing it in restaurants. Like my birthday was January 20th, and I celebrated this past Sunday at a show in Atlanta, and I brought 14 friends with me. And a bunch of them took me out afterwards, and I knew they weren't going to let me pay. So as we sat down, I said to the server, it's my birthday. Here's a 20 just to hook you up. And they grabbed it. You know, they didn't say no. And I'm curious to know from your experience how that affects the staff, how that affects the experience. I can say for me, it's been a good thing. Like nobody's been like, oh, well, I already know what I'm getting, so I'm going to ignore this person. So that's my question.
Yeah, that's interesting. Boy, I bet you could get super hooked up by throwing a 20 before drinks come down, and you're going to get it faster and all of that. I think typically, again, what we're seeing is with the QSR industry kind of having this tip fatigue, right? I have to give $1 before I get my cup of coffee, and I don't even know if that's good. That's happening within that vertical. In full service, we really don't see that because most of the managers, again, very, very few full service restaurants take this big piece of pie and all this money that's in this pot and equally divide it. It's always based off of a system of points and percentages. And they really want to tie that back to the hospitality experience. And so we typically see managers kind of looking away at that and saying, hey, put it in the pool. It needs to be part of the broader team. This isn't an I sport, it's a we sport, right? And we need to acknowledge the people who are in the back, making sure that gets expedited out and quickly. We want to make sure that your bussers are cleaning the table correctly. And so I think like most managers, especially as they're using kind of a calculation engine like a Kickfin to do that, is that they want everything to be in the pool, be calculated correctly, reported on correctly, because those are really few and far between, you know, the one-off 20s. And fantastic that you did that, right? I'm sure like you made their night. I think that works. But again, from what we see on our side of it, managers are really adamant with getting it into the calculation system so that they can tie it back to what that experience was.
That was a great answer. Great question, Hildy. Thank you. Mercedes, welcome to Rising Tides, one of our leaders. Go for it.
Hi, friends. Mercedes coming at you from sunny San Diego. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Go for it.
Thank God, my headphones sometimes are not so fun. Director of Sales and Events for the Wood Group, and then HSMAI's Director of Events. There we go. Long title to today. So I just there's a couple things of like what I'm thinking, and to be honest, I might even sell like I'm selling you guys, but I feel like there's a story I can think of off the top of my head in which I used to be a server back in college. And I would save all my cash tips until I like got to a point where I could want to deposit it, or I just like I saw that as my savings. And here's going to be the sell for Kickfin, right? And then I had $10,000 stolen in cash tips. So I think that there's a lot of like protection for your staff with using Kickfin because it's already somewhere that it cannot be stolen from. But then another thought process I'm having is like, we see a lot of discrepancies happen with tip outs in the restaurants where a server doesn't feel like the busser worked as hard as they should have. So they're going to short them $20, right? And then that falls on everybody. Then we have to go back and be like, hey, that's not an option. It's like, just because you feel like they didn't do that great of a job, that doesn't mean you can short them, right? So, but my biggest thing is like the trackability of it. I think I really like, right? And the thing I would wonder is, can they put it into, and this is just like the investment side of me, because nobody taught me how to invest when I was in college serving tables, and I wish they would have, because I would have had a lot more money. But you know, are you guys teaming up? Like, I know you said that they don't need a bank account, but is there a way for them to like put this money into a high interest yield account? Is there a way to invest the money? Is that something that they can do on the back end, or do they kind of just transfer it out and then it goes to wherever it goes? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So essentially, thanks, Justin. Yeah, so that the funds are pretty much going directly to an account of their choosing. So we're not offering we're not trying to productize and sell additional products to these employees. We're not trying to sell them insurance. We're trying to just deliver a service to them in receiving their tips digitally, and a service to the operators to not have to deal with cash. And if that is in the high yield account, the destination of the payout, then so be it. I do want to come back and say I appreciate your comment on like the cash situation, because we have had a number of clients come to us in saying that we have $15,000 in currency in a safe that 6 people have access to. And so I don't even know, I'm not saying there's bad actors here, but it's like, it's 2 a.m. You're counting paper currency. Someone's going to make a mistake. And so going back to your challenge, we have had clients come to us because they've been robbed and like, we need to get cash out. We've had clients come to us to say, I have 6 people. All my people are great, but I know they're not the best at math. So there's certainly value to that statement, Mercedes, which I appreciate. But no, at this time, we don't offer, and there's other companies that say, hey, we have this card that we can put it on that has all these features and benefits. But what we have seen from employees is they want their money where their bills are being paid, to Justin's point, where my cell phone is being debited, where my health insurance, my auto insurance. I don't want my funds on a different place that I'm going to have to transfer on over. Employees also, there's one of our sales reps actually used to be an employee at Chili's. And he had mentioned, he said, I'd have probably 3 days worth of cash in a shoebox. And whenever I can get to the bank, I get to the bank. And what if a bill is due and something's debited and the money's not there, but he actually has the money in his shoebox because he just didn't have the opportunity to make the deposit. So I think there's a lot of benefits to doing it digitally, that you're not going to spend it more. You're going to save them the trip to the bank. It's going where their bills are being debited, and so forth. But no, we don't offer any high yield savings accounts at Kickfin.
I also think to that Chili's story, there's so much money. I was talking to a bar back yesterday about tips and stuff. And he was saying, he just keeps all his tips in cash and all that. And I'm like, you literally are not getting like a percentage back a year because you're keeping it in cash. Like you're making $0 on your money. Like you're most likely losing money. So it's kind of cool that that's happening. And I think it's better to go digital, to be honest. It keeps transparency across the board.
And the trends are really there. I mean, if you look at, the recruiting pool that hospitality is looking at, you're trying to pluck people from the gig economy, the DoorDash, the Uber Eats, the Grubhub drivers that are like, hey, listen, I get paid digitally after my shift. That's great. But like, I don't have the earning potential upside of tips. Right. And so as they're kind of, mobilizing around into these different kind of employment opportunities, we wanted from day one to mirror that experience of instant gratification now to bank a choice. But again, the trackability and exactly what you said just about, making it really easy for them to stay gainfully employed is the number one objective.
Quick follow-up question. Mercedes, great points. But hey, Brian, can you direct your money to multiple accounts or just one?
Just one right now.
Okay.
Great question. I know we're running close on time. Adam, do you have a quick question you want to ask? Thanks for being here. And Dean, welcome. We appreciate you. We're going to try to get Brian and Justin out of here. Thank you guys all for paying attention, for being here. It's been a great conversation. Adam, go for it.
Hi guys. Obviously, I'm from the UK, so the platform's not here just yet, so maybe soon. There are some really cool platforms over here, and what they've done is they've linked the card data, because they have some credit card integrations, and what they've allowed the customer to do, the employee to do, is when they use their card, say at Domino's, it knows they're, say for example, a member of you guys, and because they have the credit card integration, it gives the staff member of any of your customers a discount. Is that something you might be looking at adding, giving the customer a benefit of that?
We've actually had customers that are in high kind of dense, like 6th Street, Austin, right? You like literally a bar restaurant, every single location, and they've almost like heat mapped a certain block or an area, and they've said, hey guys, we're going to load $20 onto your Kickfin card. The intent is that you go and socialize and grab a taco at one of our neighbors' place, or grab a happy hour at one of these locations. And so we have seen it. I mean, we have people that on platform that, pay the person that comes in and does a comedy show for an hour, a guitar player that comes in. Again, it's just that ability to, how do you make sure that you can reward and incentivize and also pay these people that are just part of the whole ecosystem. So not to that level, Adam. I mean, that's brilliant, right? I mean, it's incentivizing behavior, specifically to that industry. But I would say people are using Kickfin in various ways to kind of, again, socialize, connect, and also patronize people that are within that community, just in a heat map block or two of where they operate.
I love that. I love the whole idea of building community. That's why we're all here, and it's awesome to hear that you guys are doing that. I think that's a fantastic story.
Appreciate that, Adam. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Justin. Where can people learn more about Kickfin? We'll let you guys get out of here. We really appreciate it. Like I said, every Wednesday, every Friday, we do these live shows. We appreciate the community. You guys can follow us, betheshow.media/rising tides. Join it. Thank you guys all for being a part of the conversation. Brian, what's the best place for people to
Shawn, appreciate that. Kickfin.com, or you can email us directly, justin@kickfin.com or brian@kickfin.com. Happy to answer any questions. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the commentary as well. And guess we'll be talking soon, I hope.
That's it.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody.
Of course. Thank you, Elizabeth, Kyle, Mercedes, Charlie, Howard, Eric, Richard, Adam, Dean LeBay, and everybody that joined us before. We appreciate it. Great show, guys. Thank you all for participating. We'll catch you guys next week.
Be well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, producers. Thanks, Mike.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'm still downloading.
Still downloading. Welcome to Riverside. We're trying to break Riverside, Brian.